system that we have is set up to serve the economic needs of those people who are in power in this country, the ruling class that controls all the resources, that controls all the decisions, that, you know, what we're seeing right now in terms of corporate America and their neoliberal agenda. And so Jean's going to talk more about this, but right now, half of all jobs in this country are poverty zone jobs. Poverty zone is 125% of the federal poverty level or below, which the federal poverty level is way low anyways. And so we all have this idea that education is the solution to poverty. But that's actually not possible within the context of a society where where half of all the jobs are poverty zone jobs. And so what do people like us then do in public education? And what I think is really important about public education is two basic contradictions. The first one is there's a big contradiction in the ideology of public education and its reality. So the ideology of public education is that it's the great equalizer, this is your way out of poverty, that it's equal opportunity, it's democracy, we're teaching students to be civic-minded citizens. That's the ideology. The reality is exactly the opposite. It's a total hierarchy. The kind of school you go to depends on the economic background, of the neighborhood where you're going to school. It's racist. People are tracked according to race. It's completely hierarchical in every way. Jean's Professor Annion's work does great work to show how it's not just resources in the school, but it's also what's taught. Like some students are taught to rule, and other students are taught to obey the rules. Even within the regular public school system and different kinds of public schools. So the reason that it's like this is because people are being socialized into the economic hierarchy of our society, and so some people find this to be like a depressing analysis. I was just having this conversation with the staff at my school, like, well, if that's the case, if education is just set up to justify the hierarchy and to reproduce the hierarchy in our society, then I can't do anything about it. You're telling me that this, like the inner city school in Los Angeles where I work, it's always going to be like this, and it's a depressing thought for most people. But to me, we need this kind of analysis. It's the opposite of depressing for three basic reasons. First of all, we all live very frustrated as teachers every day that we can't do the jobs that we want. Like, we can't do education in the way that it's meant to be done. And people internalize this and say, well, I just need to work harder. I'm not able to individualize attention to the student. I need to try harder to individualize my and when you see it like this, you're going to be frustrated every day unless you have a sort of analysis of what's going on in society as a whole. So to me, it makes it less depressing. Secondly, it's seeing this analysis is the most realistic way to see it, because we know that we need to fight, we need to get outside the walls of our classroom and fight for economic justice in order to really solve these problems. So just to give one example, in North Carolina, in Raleigh, they had a very successful program of integration where a suburban district and an urban district, they unified the two school districts, and they had actual quotas for racial quotas for integrating the schools. 95% of parents, including white parents, supported this program. It also mixed the tax base between the suburban and the urban schools so that it was much more equitable. And because it was so successful, because it actually equalized opportunities to a certain extent, they just dismantled it just now in North Carolina. But like, without fighting for programs like this, we're not going to be able to fundamentally change the situation within our classroom without taking money from the war and giving it to education in California, without taxing oil, without a more progressive tax structure in our society. We're not going to be able to solve the problems that we see in our schools. So it encouraged, to me, this kind of analysis encourages teachers to get involved in fights for economic justice. And then just lastly, and this is where Megan picks up later, is that to me it's you need a vision of what we're fighting for. So it's incredibly encouraging to think about the kind of education that we're going to be able to take part in as we see social struggles take off, like what we saw in Madison, and beyond that, what we see in Egypt, the revolution that's going on right now. as society, as people rise up against the structures, the oppressive structures in our society, the kind of human enlightenment you really see and the kind of thirst for knowledge that inspired all of us to become teachers, we will see that, but it's going to be more as a product of social struggle than something we can just do within the four walls of our classroom. But all of us up here, I'm sure, feel confident that that kind of thirst for knowledge is something that we're going to participate in as society begins to demand more equality and justice. So it's, to me, it's the opposite of a depressing analysis.